Today's story begins with the sunset's rays. This place is an utterly desolate city. Dust and smoke swirl densely in the air. On the deserted street appears the silhouette of a teenager. Park Caillou slightly lifts his head. The world has completely sunk into destruction. His mind feels somewhat empty. Everything left is for him, after a hopeless struggle. That is emptiness and death. Park Caillou had once been humanity's guardian in the past. Memories from that year blew into his mind like the wind. His breath is heavy like raindrops. Therefore, when he lifts his head so his face touches the rain, he shouts louder. Beneath the mountain of rotting corpses is an ending in his mind. Park Caillou must face the ending first. Now, when there is no hope left, the surroundings are full of soulless faces. Yet, still, a familiar figure stands in the corridor. In truth, in a world that has been annihilated. At the same time, in another abandoned building, someone remains in a position of eternal suffering. The deadly weapon has already been stained red. Park Caillou continues to struggle, clinging to fragile life. Next, in another building in the city, Rebecca slowly crawls out. Meanwhile, a thought passes through. Just one more day. On the empty street, someone has become a target. Rebecca closes one eye following proper military technique. Then, her finger moves slightly. Park Caillou engraves a phrase in his mind. Even if it's just one more day, I must survive. Yes. Thanks to that effort, he assembles his weapon while silently telling himself. His mind is fragmented from confusion. I still, live like this, thinking of that, his eyes empty. But, unexpectedly, even in a world that has decayed, there are still quite a few very interesting stories. On the screen is a news article. Preparing for nuclear war. I survived 3 years ago thanks to building a bunker. Park Caillou believes that no matter what happens to the world in the future. Meanwhile, he taps a few keys on the keyboard. Never mind those keyboard heroes. He knows clearly he must live as himself. There is no other way but to fight, to live as lavishly and splendidly as possible. On an ordinary day in Seoul, South Korea, both sides of the road were bustling with traffic. At that moment, residents suddenly heard a loud screech from the sky. In the blink of an eye, a terrible heat slowly touched the ground. After that, the capital had to endure a horrifying explosion. That was also the decisive day. A nuclear missile launched by a hostile nation had been fired straight at Seoul. On that day, the way the world ended is a very complex story. Yet there are still a few interesting details, going back 3 years to when the war broke out. And here is Park Caillou, a person who had wisely prepared for the future. In reality, the topic that humanity was heading toward a dead end was already a familiar discussion everywhere. However, only 2 groups truly prepared for that scenario. One was the upper class, who had a lot of money and anxiety about everything, or those who were convinced that the world would end tomorrow, so they bet everything they had on escaping reality. Naturally, Park Caillou was the one to act in the end. First, he liquidated all his assets and diligently researched information and news to survive the apocalypse, the first and essential task. From that, Park Caillou learned how to choose a location for his shelter. He focused on the map and murmured, deciding where to build the shelter. To choose a location, 3 conditions had to be met. Park Caillou circled an area on the map. He began recalling. First, it must be a sparsely populated place, very difficult to reach, even in emergencies, yet still maintain a connection to the city. Second, it must have favorable terrain for defense in any emergency. And finally, it was a matter of budget. Park Caillou understood one thing. I have to achieve all of the above within my budget. The location selection ended in a remote forest beneath an airbase on the outskirts of the city. Upon arrival, someone curiously asked, "Are you from Seoul?" "From now on, we are neighbors. Let's get along." Park Caillou found it slightly amusing. I don't remember the old man's exact name, but his surname was definitely Kim, the owner of the land next to the shelter. Next, after selecting the location, it was time for construction. Park Caillou gathered workers to support the project. Calmly, he spoke, "All the necessary equipment is here, and I will work with you." The truth was, at first, they were reluctant to let him participate. Then, the men raised their glasses together. And of course, after buying drinks and snacks, the issues between them were quickly resolved. During construction, they encountered a problem. Old Kim angrily shouted, "What conspiracy are you carrying out here? Making noise every day while drunk. Do you even have a permit?" Park Kyu looked at Old Kim thoughtfully, wondering if this counted as a peculiarity of the suburbs. Old Kim had a very unpleasant temperament, with no specific reason behind it. It was simply that no one paid attention to him. Then, the construction workers shouted, "Get out of here! Are you trying to intimidate us?" Old Kim croaked, "If you intend to continue this mess, you'll have to go through me." And so, he continuously obstructed everyone. While the workers were getting angry, Park Kyu intervened, calmly. "Hold on." He firmly gripped the man's axe. Then, Park Kyu explained, "I will handle this personally, because you are not exactly a righteous person." At that moment, Park Kyu had reached the limit of his patience. He carried a black bag, walking alone on the road. At that time, something stopped his action. From afar, Old Kim was meeting someone. Old Kim's son, extremely arrogant, said, "No need for long talk. Just put the land under my name. From now on we will take care of father." Seeing Old Kim disagree, he roared like a wild animal, "Why don't you sell it and stop causing trouble when we've offered to take care of you?" In the end, he grabbed his father by the collar. Fury surged like a storm. "He had given all the prime land to my sister. All that was left for me was a ruined house and a few rice fields. At least, he should obediently give it to me." Seeing this, Park Kyu couldn't help but feel upset. On this side, he pressed closer to his father. "I have endured your bad temper for many years. Isn't this the time you should act like a father? Why so silent? Answer me. Will you hand over this land to me or not?" At that moment, Park Kyu cleared his throat slightly. The man noticed a stranger and immediately stopped. Upon closer inspection, Old Kim's son caught Park Kyu's cold gaze. His hand released, but he still asked deliberately, "Damn it, what now? Anyway, transfer this land to me before you die, I'm warning you." The car quickly drove away, but the shouting sound still echoed, "Next time I'll come again." Finally, only the two of them remained. Park Kyu looked at Old Kim with complexity. He decided to ask, "Would you like a cigarette?" As the sunset fell, they remained together. "Do you have parents?" Park Kyu briefly explained, "They died in an accident." Old Kim, in a low voice, sighed and said, "I see." Next, Park Kyu curiously asked, "Why not sell that land and live somewhere else? It's a large area, you could manage on your own." For a moment, the atmosphere between the two became solemn. After a while, an aged voice sounded. "Initially, it was the land I gave to my daughter. It was a useless wasteland, just like the land you're building on. But who would have thought they would build a highway there? You tell me to sell this land and go somewhere else?" His eyes filled with tears, seemingly not looking at reality. A familiar figure appeared. He gently said, "I cannot do it. I cannot." Those 3 words had been linked to his wife. After speaking, Old Kim told him, "Let's go." Even now, Park Kyu still cannot say what exactly he did for Old Kim. But one thing is certain. That short conversation made the old man's locked heart open, like the highway and its 10 lanes. After that day, Old Kim no longer interfered with the construction. With 581 days left on the countdown, they began planting. By the day when 211 days remained, the vegetable beds had matured. Time passed. The winter of that year marked 37 days left. Park Ye sat on a wooden chair, gazing at the sky. And finally, the bombing event officially occurred. That was the first day marking the start of the war. The scorching flames brushed past, frightening his face. On that day, a deafening roar shook the entire earth, accompanied by the belated air raid alarm heralding the apocalypse. While pondering, Old Kim hurriedly called, "Hey Park Kyu. My son lives in Seoul. Is he still alive? Please find my son." And in this way, Old Kim had timely entered the completed shelter. Park Kyu sat in front of the bright computer screen. He was moved, scrolling through every piece of information. Then, a meeting took place. He told the truth to him. He had passed away. Old Kim's hat was twisted out of shape. He suggested, "Soon there will be a second wave of airstrikes, including urban areas outside. It's dangerous. Please stay in my shelter for now." Old Kim hesitated. "No, I cannot leave my house. But thank you for offering that." An obvious truth emerged. The apocalypse had begun. Next, music echoed around the shelter. Park Kyu quickly grabbed the phone. He stared at it, dazed, with no warning. A second later, the screen lit up again. Outside appeared Wang Su. A cold thought entered his mind. Those who are still alive. Park Kyu's gaze seemed to look into the past. There, he saw old Kim and his wife. The truth was old Kim was no longer there, and the survivors. Back in the shelter, the axe blade was ready. Then, Park Kyu also went out to open the door. A murderous aura appeared, making his eyes blaze red. He had engraved a definition in his heart, an enemy. The sky was incredibly clear, white clouds drifting lightly. Beneath the ground, a scream rang out. At this moment, there were still 852 days left in the countdown. Old Kim ran over excitedly. "Did you catch it yet? My God, look, it's as big as a house." Back when I was in the Special Forces, my sharpshooting skills even earned me a medal. But later, when investigating, you would only realize he was just a regular civil defense soldier. Even a hunting rifle counts as usable weaponry. But with just those things, one cannot possibly deal with the future. That is why Park Kyu's gaze was so intense. He turned around and stood upright, always facing forward. The airbase was near that area. It was a joint military base of the South Korean and US armies, also hosting a special unit against monsters, apparently called the Hunters. In other words, it was an ideal place to acquire weapons. His plan was as follows. If war broke out with the enemy, the airbase near Gyeonggi would be the first target. When the nuclear attack began, the base would fall into chaos, and he would put on protective gear and break in to steal weapons. While silently waiting for the right moment, a trade proposal appeared. "Hey, sir, have you arranged any firearms yet?" Wang Su asked casually. China was full of people like him. Wang Su was the employee he had hired to build the shelter, a Korean of Chinese descent, formerly from a gangster background, and now Wang Su had retired from that life. Park Kyu glanced at him. He had come to Korea to work and earn money. At that time, the man sweetly said, "The shelter is grand, but without a single gun, it's useless." Right, Park Kyu knew well. The tone was overly mixed, seemingly trying to brag about his connections. But Park Kyu grasped his hand. "Show me the goods once you're done." Reason told him this was an offer he could not refuse. And then, the day of the trade arrived. Park Kyu stood alone in a desolate place. Earlier, he had requested a private service center to investigate. Wang Su was not a member of the Northeast Gang but part of the Shanghai Triad. The goods had also been brought in through connections there. Seeing him, Park Kyu thought quietly, "Well, never mind, it's not too late." Wang Su gestured and explained, "My subordinates will bring the goods shortly, just wait a bit." Standing next to him, Park Kyu told himself, "I just need to receive the goods." Meanwhile, the man was fiddling with his phone. Seeing the message screen, Park Kyu quietly asked, "Your daughter?" Wang Su honestly replied, "Yes, she's only 7, with a strange personality, causing me a lot of trouble." "Here they come, let's go." Another man ran up to him. Then, they introduced 3 Type 56 rifles, 300 rounds of 7.62 ammunition, and 3 magazines as a bonus. Park Kyu picked up the weapons and tested them. Good quality, well maintained, no problems. Then he put the weapons back. Meanwhile, Park Kyu didn't forget to observe them. Wang Su smiled and said, "See, Korea's fine too." At that moment, he sensed something strange. Park Kyu was quickly approached. The man asked in a low voice, "Hey, sir, thinking about it, were you alone in that shelter? It looks so spacious." During the conversation, the man placed his hand on the weapon. Park Kyu replied cautiously, I'm alone. Wang Su also answered mysteriously, I see. Then, he relaxed slightly. Well then. In a hidden corner where no one could see, he quietly pulled out a knife. Is there a problem? The man still held an extremely strange expression. After a while, Wang Su smiled again. I mean, a big house has room for guests to visit. You're a considerate person. Park Kyu casually invited. If you ever lose your place, just come find me. You already know the location anyway. Wang Su quickly refused. No, after this, I'll return to the northeast to see my daughter. I'll never come back here. Check the goods, ammunition and magazines, pay later. Park Kyu pondered for a long time. The words, never come back, seemed genuine. Anyway, back on the day the apocalypse occurred, the phone rang loudly. Park Kyu stared at the screen for a long time. The caller was saved as Wang Su, construction worker. As he turned, a rapid deduction formed. Before returning to his country, the camera had recorded the stranger outside the base. He needed a shelter and weapons to survive. Wang Su's steps came slowly. Moreover, having known the location and facilities, he certainly would not hesitate for long. So Park Kyu decided to answer the call. On the other side, Wang Su ran frantically. He cautiously fabricated an excuse. I brought the ammunition and goods myself. Where are you now? Park Kyu only felt one thing. The luck and misfortune was that his enemy had come alone. He also prepared an axe for self-defense. Then, he decisively opened the door to greet him. Moreover, he resolved to deal with him before he could find accomplices. A malicious gleam shot out even though Park Kyu stood in the shadows. Wang Su did not hide and revealed his weapon. Next, he immediately accelerated. His arm flexibly swung to gain momentum. He had determined to finish everything with one slash. However, the rapid action was obstructed. Park Kyu quickly leaned to evade the strike. He swiftly moved out of the opponent's attack range. Then it was Park Kyu's turn to use a weapon. One slash sliced across his body. A bright red cut appeared on the neck. Park Kyu continued to raise his arm high. Wang Su, falling, had no way to counterattack. Finally, he painfully questioned, What are you? A soldier or a spy? Park Kyu coldly glanced at his enemy. From above, he lowered his gaze, just as I thought. He was on the verge of collapse. Wang Su painfully grabbed his leg. Please spare my life. Please spare me, the voice broke. Park Kyu coldly replied, That's a bit difficult. Even without my hand, you wouldn't survive. Losing so much blood, it's tough. Finally, he desperately pleaded, Then end it quickly for me. Wang Su was no longer alive. At that moment, the ringtone sounded again. Park Kyu cautiously searched his body, just in case he hadn't come alone. The caller was Wang Su's daughter. For a moment, Park Kyu didn't know what to do. Seeing her message, Dad, come back quickly, he could only reply, I'm afraid it's impossible. But Park Kyu knew there was no time for sentimentality. After 29 days, it shouldn't have existed now. As soon as the radiation meter indicated safe levels, he immediately went to the airbase. Park Kyu could only exclaim a few words. Ironically, the military facility was perfect, and the amount of weapons could equip an entire army. Then he lowered his head slightly. Park Kyu knew well, his preliminary plan had ultimately been correct. Meanwhile, he glanced at a vehicle. Sometimes he wondered if Wang Su had come here earlier. Reflecting, he corrected himself. If from the start he hadn't traded with me. The entire desolate area stirred confusion in his heart. In his thoughts arose the question, would he survive? Would he meet his daughter again in this damn apocalyptic world? Today, the sound from an electronic device rings out. Hello Vivigal friends, this is 337. Today we are going to make a stuffed doll together. This is something my daughter really likes. First, roll the yarn into a ball. At first it will be a bit difficult to measure the amount of yarn. There is a fact that this video was not filmed before the war. Its origin is the online forum of Doomsday followers, Viva Apocalypse. Thanks to the Galaxy Link satellite communication network, developed by world-famous entrepreneur Elon Musk. Even in a post-apocalyptic world, we can still use the internet. Then, the instructor continues to say, it looks difficult, but once you get used to it, it's very easy. Thanks to the development of this miraculous technology, survivors can connect and interact in the virtual world. At this point, the video gradually comes to an end. You just need to cut off the excess part and it's done. It's finished, Park Kyu sighed and found comfort. In the video, the man asks, you see, it's really easy, isn't it? On the contrary, your product looks a bit distorted. He mocks himself. It seems I've seen this thing in a phallus-worshipping village before. And as time passed, it has been exactly 1 year since the war began. There are no more nuclear bombs or attacks. But the claws of monsters have spread everywhere. They rise high up to dozens of floors of apartment buildings. The government has completely lost control, and restoring life is impossible. On the forum, more and more posts about refugees appear. The number of members inactive for a long time also increases. Vigilance toward strangers has turned into hatred and fear. He sits at the table with a dazed expression. That's because he knows well, looking at the present, such a reaction is not exaggerated. Park Kyu chose to block the user defender. Recently, this user has been known as the Human Hunter. Since the war began, the hunter has continuously posted achievements of killing people. He doesn't do it for fun. He kills for one reason only, to warn everyone not to invade his territory. However, when unblocking and searching for his posts, Park Kyu seems to see him gradually becoming addicted to killing. Witnessing those insane boasting posts, it is understandable that people defend themselves and become aggressive. And then, he clenches his fist. The inactive notification of the user Park Kyu loved the most. The one who always posted videos making toys for his child, Anonymous 337, no longer appeared. Winter has come. This is day 395 post-apocalypse. The screen is showing 2 chats. 423, are you still alive? If alive, answer. If alive, report your situation. By now, the number of inactive members has surpassed the number of active members. Park Kyu gradually accepts the passing of someone, because no one knows who will be next. Standing in the snowstorm, he understands, so do I. Right then, the binoculars observe a strange person. Park Kyu asks himself, who is this? This is Director Hong of the new China construction company, the workers who once participated in building shelters. He slightly curled his lips, observing all of them. Now, those people have become a band of looters, returning to find their old customers. A shadow falls over the shelter door. Then, he reaches out and opens the door. Park Kyu has decided, since they so thoughtfully paid me a home visit, then I must give them a warm welcome. This time, he still chose an axe as his weapon. His eyes glance toward the door. I silently wait for them in the dark. Outside, someone suspiciously asks, are you sure it's here? Another immediately replies, for sure. I heard it was built as a parking place. Surely it's a shelter. But why is there a door? Could it be that someone already occupied it? Director Hong orders, Min Jae-yu, Hyun Bam, you two go in first and check. They quickly leave the group on command. Then, one holding a gun, one holding a shield enters. After a while both stop. Cheers erupt, it's cigarettes, a whole box. At the doorway another voice says, do you smell the stench of rotting corpses? Min Jae-yu moves his nose slightly to check. Both of them have the same result, nothing at all. Director Hong shouts louder, check if anyone is inside, check carefully. At that moment, Park Kyu jumps down from the shelf. He kicks Hyun Bam's shield. Both of them fall onto each other. Min Jae-yu shouts in panic, what the hell is that? In that moment, Park Kyu throws away the axe. He doesn't mind revealing murderous intent, one down. Next, they see an agile figure rushing out the door. A scream erupts like a wounded beast. The opponent trembles, grabbing Park Kyu and begging. But still he coldly raises the axe. Hyun Bam screams, spare me, please. Before the sound of pleading, his face shows no expression. After finishing, he hears a call, Hyun Bam, Min Jae-yu, how many inside? if not dead, answer quickly. On the contrary, Park Kyu has already identified the enemy, 3 left outside. Outside, Director Hong tries hard to persuade. Calm down. Going inside means death. Isn't it a bit spicy? Throw it in there. Don't stick your head into the tiger's den. Lure them out. Hearing that, he gives a bit of praise. At least the old man has some brains. However, he presses the switch. Park Kyu smiles with a twisted grin. Things will not go the way you want. The shelter door quickly closes, because this is my home. Although his comrades are annoyed, Director Hong still tries to reassure. Ignore it. There must be ventilation ducts. I participated in construction, so I know clearly. There's only one entrance. Find the vent and throw it in. That's all. Inside the shelter, Park Kyu sighs a little. This really is a game of life and death. He never thought he would face a bunch of petty looters. Then, another door opens. His heart swells with a bit of pride. There is one thing the old man doesn't know. In fact, after the director's group finished construction, Park Kyu used the knowledge he learned from them and reinforced the shelter himself. They will never expect this. In an instant, he reaches the end. Park Kyu opens the door. Outside is a snowy space. He exhales cold air and waits. Since when has death stepped one step closer to them? Over there, Director Hong shouts angrily, "So stubborn, still alive, huh? Let's throw another one inside. Then another one will be on his way." At that moment, Park Kyu suddenly attacks. That surprise strike hits right on target. He stares at them coldly as if challenging. He looks dumbfounded as his companions gradually fall. Finally, Director Hong stammers and begs, "Don't shoot, I surrender." Park Kyu coldly asks, "How many more are there?" He honestly answers, "I'm the last one." "Really, we only came with 5 people." Park Kyu orders, "Load their bodies onto the truck." At that moment, he discovers something. A strange agitation rises in his heart. The man panics when seeing him move. Why is that? In Park Kyu's hand is a familiar wool sheep. He angrily strikes him down with the butt of the gun. Then, Park Kyu shouts loudly, "Speak. The owner of this doll, what did you do to him? Did you kill all the people in the place you looted?" He responds in panic. "It seems like there's a misunderstanding. I didn't kill anyone. At that time there was only one uncle. Moreover, I wasn't the one who killed him. When I arrived he was already dead. I just took things." He decided to order him to do one thing. Lead the way to that place. That place is not far, only 30 minutes by car. It is exactly the place that appeared in the video of Anonymous 337. Then, Director Hong softly says, "This is the place." A hot barrel of a gun suddenly appears. Park Kyu seems to see the one who fired. He glances behind his own back. There, the murderer in an extremely clean shirt. His pupils shrink violently. The note left at the scene with the name, "Defender." After finishing, he leaves. Park Kyu is filled with rage. Who else could it be? Who else? The dead lay on the cold floor. The scene was gruesome, but Park Kyu still stared for a long time. He recalled Defender's post. Deal with those 2 pests properly. Sadness gradually invaded his emotions. Corpses often contain more information than we think. Years ago, someone asked, "Captain, have you found any clues yet?" Apart from the usual cause of death, we can also know the circumstances when the victim died, the type of weapon that caused the fatal wound, and the perpetrator's patterns during the act. A dry sound escaped his throat. We have a lot more. He turned his gaze toward the ground behind him. Then Park Kyu continued in a low voice. Many other documents, for example the killer's attitude toward the death. Back in the present, Director Hong urgently cried out, "We're done, let me go now." "What? I already did everything you said. I have my own hardships, I have children. If I don't return, they'll die. You don't want that to happen either." A second later Park Kyu answered coldly, "You misunderstand. I have no intention of sparing anyone who knows the location of my home. Besides, the reason you mentioned others have said the same before." Park Kyu ended another life and left. In shelter life, sunny days are always special. The momentary relief from worries about the cold and supplies lets people rest and enjoy the sun. He gently leaned back. It was nothing short of heaven. But any joy in this world must be paid for with corresponding risks. A news post appeared from a user nicknamed Mommy Dongton. She was hiding alone in a high-rise in southern Gyeonggi and kept posting survival logs describing the looters' behavior. Because she could not fight them, she posted an attention-grabbing message threatening to blow up the entire Dongtan area. The complaints of people in that area unintentionally created a wave of outrage. This post hinted at a terrifying truth. The looters' methods were becoming increasingly sophisticated. It was very likely they were also users of Viva Apocalypse, and information that helps others survive could itself become a tool to threaten them. From that day on, forum users realized one thing: if you can't defend yourself, you won't survive. Collective survivalism rose, and survivors began preparing to fight enemies in their own ways. Of course, Park Kyu thought differently. He believed that even if you could fend off attackers once or twice, the root problem was human selfishness. Gathering together only makes you easier to spot, and encountering a stronger group means death. Armed conflict is a last resort. The most important thing is to hide perfectly. In that regard, Park Kyu's territory was ideal, so barren that no one bothered to stop by. Add to that the pack of mutated stray dogs from radiation, and uninvited guests grew wary. Rumor had it that radiation zombified creatures appeared in the strongest city, but someone survived there and handled them with a sniper. The top floors of buildings were often ideal. The dull zombies below get one headshot each. Park Kyu tried to remember, and one more important thing: no enemy is eternal. Looking at the control screen, a man shouted, "Where the hell is that bastard hiding? In this wasteland, where can he hide? Are you sure you're looking in the right place? Any mix-up?" The other replied, "How could it be wrong? You should check again. Stop arguing and send the drone around one more time." Then the man declared, "That bastard, if we find him and can't get anything out of him, don't blame me. When we split up, his share gets deducted." On another screen, the man was astonished. "What the hell is this?" That is, the drone footage showed Rebecca. He flushed with excitement. Looking at her outfit, it must be remnants of the US military gear. "We found good prey, maybe change target." At that moment, viscous fluids sprayed out. Seconds later, the stray dogs appeared and attacked the looters. Blood sprays dyed the area dark red. The man felt a shock in his head, confronting death. Immediately he ordered, "They've mutated, speed up." The driver asked, "What about those behind us?" The fat guy replied, "They won't get away, at least we must escape." No sooner had he spoken than one of them was thrown into the vehicle. The disgusting corpse stuck to their view. Then came the sound of breaking mixed with screams. The pack of stray dogs quickly stopped attacking. Those in the vehicle were already mutilated. Moments later, the driver suddenly sobered up. He stared at the switch to open the vehicle door. At that moment, the predator's glare appeared. He couldn't help but tremble. The stray dogs drew nearer. His last thought before death was, "Damn it." Time passed, and it was day 458 post-apocalypse. The news was posted a week later, and the Dongtan mommy drama had somewhat subsided. Park Kyu felt a little surprised inside Stray Dogs recently had been. Then his messages showed a new notification. Mommy Dongtan, the once forgotten user, had posted again, seemingly to attract attention. The content was still a threat to blow things up. Elsewhere, a piercing shout rang out. "Open the door now. Seeing her post proves she's here." In reality, that account had been labeled a pathological liar, so no one believed her anymore. Shortly after, those outside broke the door. The explosives quickly blew up the whole area per the account owner's wish. "Kill me." This time it really exploded. Netizens began to buzz. Just now there was a big blast toward Gwangju. Did that bastard do it? Looking at the post author, Park Kyu pondered a bit. Defender, he's near Gwangju. I must remember this. But for now, a more important task remained, identifying the dangers around me. At the same time, Rebecca brought the scope up to eye level. With a small movement, The surveillance drone was shot down. She calmly stood and admired her handiwork. On the empty road, someone was walking toward the spot. After finding a suitable location, the person looked up. Park Kyu decided it's time to greet the new neighbor. At that very moment, Rebecca coldly opened fire. In an instant, Park Kyu felt the bullet come very close. He carefully tucked himself behind an old car. This place was the territory of one of his few neighbors, the crazy gunman. Park Kyu gently lowered himself near the ground. He reached out to check the marks left by the bullet. From that, a question arose. The distance between the warning shot and the killing shot was unbelievably short. Could it be that she had no choice but to pull the trigger? In some ways, she was even more dangerous than Defender. Actually, the reason he came to meet this neighbor they normally didn't interfere with was because her identity had been recorded by his drone. From Rebecca's hair color, clothing, and weapon, it was clear she had once been an American soldier stationed in Korea. When the war broke out, like the leading power, the United States successfully protected itself by shooting down most of the enemy's nuclear missiles. But their true enemy was something else. They withdrew all troops from overseas bases, including Korea. Fighters circled the sky. In truth, they threw everything into preventing the rift, the origin of the monsters. At this time, coming to claim sovereignty over the airbase area or having malicious intent would only bring trouble, even if one did not want to confront a trained soldier. Park Kyu slightly frowned, but if she invaded my territory, then I must act. I won't let anyone threaten my home. He thought about the floor where Rebecca lived. Park Kyu commented in a cold voice. I took the time to observe her. Next, the day reached the 481st. Around this time of day, the shooting always stopped. He patiently watched above a little longer, then concluded that perhaps this was when the sniper went to sleep. This was the only opportunity to approach the building. The main entrance had been blocked with obstacles, so the best way was to climb from the neighboring building and then break into the middle floors. Saying it and doing it, he began to move. Park Kyu had to think long to find the best approach. In a moment his body was suspended in midair. Below was an iron column that could end his life. Just looking at it gave Park Kyu extra motivation. He calmed his breathing. Next, he successfully climbed up to that floor. His next action was to take up his weapon and survey the surroundings. At the end of his sight was a window that had been boarded up. He was a little pleased. There was no one there. Then Park Kyu gently lifted his foot because he knew the rule. Never be careless for even a second. In a short while he reached the stairs. Park Kyu had to always be on guard for someone appearing from above. The door leading to the rooftop, where the sniper's watchtower was. Park Kyu encountered no enemies on the way here. He tried to pull the door open as quietly as possible. At the end of his view was a person curled up in a blanket. His mind relaxed. Just as he predicted, she was sound asleep. Lucky, no fight. Right then, Rebecca appeared from a hidden corner and lowered her gun. A murderous aura made him startle. Then Park Kyu raised his hands to show goodwill. He couldn't help but wonder if she had discovered him and was lying in ambush here. A youthful female voice, definitely the girl from the camera. Rebecca spoke briefly. I'm not threatening you. Put the gun down. In the meantime, Park Kyu already judged from the sound that the barrel was quite long. At least it wasn't a handgun. Then she shouted, put it down, and Park Kyu complied. But he really wanted to say, careless, how dare you babble in front of the enemy before you've restrained them? In the struggle, she unconsciously pulled the trigger. Rebecca's eyes showed anger mixed with panic. He, on the other hand, looked at her coldly. The dummy in the corner had taken a few bullets. Park Kyu leaned away from danger. In the meantime, his hand gripped her shoulder. Below, Park Kyu thrust his leg out. He slammed his thigh into the opponent's thigh. Her muscles quickly contracted. The pain made Rebecca cough. By reflex, she lost control and collapsed. Even so, Rebecca still tried to crawl away. At that moment, Park Kyu brought his leg down again. He aimed the gun downward. His leg pinned Rebecca so she could not move. Then Park Kyu said coldly, "Unfortunately, at first I only intended to check how many people there were and leave, but I found your weapons cache. If the looters around get that arsenal, it would be dangerous." Rebecca looked at the man she considered the enemy with hatred. Park Kyu coldly lectured, "If you want to live alone, then hide properly a bit. Blame yourself for acting carelessly." Immediately Rebecca screamed in despair, "No, don't look." His mind alerted, could there be accomplices? From the hiding spot, Rebecca's voice came, "Run." In the end, the little girl did not follow Rebecca's command. Seeing the other person appear, Park Kyu froze. Sue called in a childish voice, "Mom." Park Kyu was extremely surprised to see the girl, a child. Conversely, Rebecca's hatred rose to its peak. A sudden attack came. Even so, Park Kyu managed to spring away. Meanwhile, he pondered a bit. "I used quite a lot of force. How does she still have the strength to struggle? Must finish her before she can arm herself." But perhaps everything was beyond prediction. Rebecca only ran quickly to Sue. She hugged her daughter tightly, using her body to shield her. Everything had been swept by his cold gaze. "I thought she would pick up the rifle, because that was the only way to give them a chance to survive. Yet she chose not to. My neighbor was not a crazed murderer." For Rebecca, this place was like a dangerous jungle, lost in a foreign country, standing at the brink of annihilation. She could do only one thing to protect her daughter: squeeze the trigger at anything that moved. Next, Park Kyu kicked her wrist. After disarming the opponent, he said coldly, "Recently, this is my land, my residence. Step over it, and I'll shoot. Understand? Don't come near here again. Stay put and take care of the girl." Speaking English a bit awkwardly should be enough for her to understand. Meanwhile, Sue stammered, asking, "Medicine?" "Yes." He looked blankly at the exposed skin. "Medicine." Too deep. It turned out she was slow because of the wound. Park Kyu generously threw supplies toward them. He didn't forget to advise, "Antibiotics and anti-inflammatories. Take them and you'll feel better. Consider it compensation for trespassing." Rebecca stammered in reply, "It's not medicine, not that." Her face showed exhaustion. Rebecca nearly knelt. She panted and said, "Painkillers." The pitiful look in their eyes passed over him. "Painkillers, do you have any?" For a moment, he could only remain silent. Rebecca's dazed gaze did not leave him. Park Kyu knew well that she was hoping for a false comfort, but instead he coldly explained that medicine is not a miracle cure that can solve everything. If it truly were, then everyone would use it. Can you communicate in Korean?" Everything had temporarily ended. From that day on, Park Kyu began sharing formula milk and painkillers with them through a prearranged drop point. In recent days, gunfire had been heard more and more. Park Kyu guessed that it didn't seem like a firefight, because there was only shooting from one side, but the frequency was abnormally high. When she asked for medicine, Rebecca's condition was terrible. Perhaps those gunshots were not meant to drive away intruders, but rather were symptoms of the madness encroaching on her mind. While he was thinking, a strange light shone on his face. Upon observing, it came from a building. Park Kyu followed the trace. Morse code, "Meet there." He walked for a while, then stopped completely. Sue appeared and managed to say a few words. "Uncle, Mom hurts." The girl looked at him with pleading eyes. Park Kyu followed Sue into the building, and he could not help but be surprised. Inside, the room was filled with American-style items, and the solution Rebecca had chosen instead of medicine was seeking comfort from these meaningless things. He stayed silent, letting her realize it herself. While bandaging, Rebecca recounted, "They have RPGs, many people, shooting day and night without stop." Park Kyu already knew, aside from the looters drawn by the gunfire, Rebecca was also enduring the pain of infectious arthritis left untreated. She suddenly opened up. "I miss home. Family, friends, want to speak in our language." Her voice was faint, but home is very far. By instinct, Rebecca looked up at the sky. At that moment, Sue gently wiped her mother's tears. In despair, she asked, "Medicine, do you have it?" Park Kyu's eyes glistened with emotion. He was seeing through to the time right after the apocalypse began. when Rebecca and her daughter were in utter misery. Returning to the present, Park Caillou declared firmly, "No matter what, I will not give you that medicine. Running away from reality cannot solve problems. What I can do is lessen your burden. Then lend me those weapons." That night, rain poured down heavily. Park Caillou chose to act in such weather because it was the best option when leaving familiar territory. The rain obscured vision, and the cold made people curl up. He carefully examined the large crates, then confirmed the RPG rounds were stored here. While loading the weapon, he knew well the enemy numbers were overwhelming. The looters were busy chatting, but a sixth sense seemed quietly active. One of them instinctively glanced around. However, in front of him was a searing flash. A rocket was flying very close. Park Caillou told himself, must kill as many as possible in a single strike. The blast radius was decent, yet more survived than expected. The thieves began fleeing in chaos, but the first one to run quickly lost his life. Park Caillou had already set an ambush there. In the rain, firepower swept through them relentlessly. After firing, he tilted his head slightly back. One of them still had strength to resist. The target shifted to Park Caillou. A bullet tore through his coat. The others shouted, "Kill him!" But as soon as they spoke, only empty ground was before them. Where did he go? Damn it, he escaped. How many were there? The leader barked, "Not many. Hurry to Gapyeong, gather more people, wipe them out before dawn." His order had barely finished when he was no longer alive. Meanwhile, more had fallen to the gunfire. A low voice rang out from the darkness. "In this unease I understand the feeling of wanting to be near the light, but that only makes you a target." Heavy steps approached. Park Caillou had switched to an axe. "Hiding in the rain for so long, I'm freezing to death, let's end this." The despair of death grew heavier. The iron axe was raised, no mind left to care who was infected. "Now I just want to go home immediately." After everything was over, Park Caillou invited Rebecca and her daughter into his shelter. Sue curiously asked, "Why is there even a toilet in here?" He coldly ordered, "Sit quietly beside your mother." He wrapped another layer of bandages on Rebecca's leg. Park Caillou gave instructions, then glanced in annoyance at Sue. After that, he regained composure and said, "Watch the video and just follow along, that should work." Rebecca remained silent, expressionless like a statue. She made him thoughtful. It seemed her spirit still had not improved. "Because I only healed the wounds on her body, there's no way to heal the wounds inside the heart." "Wait, there is one way, a miracle cure that could heal the heart of a sniper." Park Caillou tried to catch Rebecca's attention. "Hey." He opened his computer and gestured, "Come look at this." What he brought up was the English newsfeed of Viva Apocalypse. Actually, this was the main forum, with many more users than the other one. Rebecca asked cautiously, "What is this? Could it really connect to America?" Park Caillou replied calmly, "Of course, try posting something." She couldn't wait and began typing. The system showed the words, "Skeleton. Hello everyone." Another account quickly asked, "Why laugh like this?" But just that one line made her lips twitch faintly. Time passed again. The second Christmas Eve after the apocalypse arrived. On the forum, a trend was booming, decorating a Christmas tree created by a former game programmer. Park Caillou's tree had no visitors, while the trees of popular users were flooded with comments. Park Caillou couldn't help but laugh. Defender's tree was all about death. Soon after, the radio sounded again. "Skeleton, are you there?" Park Caillou asked with concern, "What is it, Sue? What are you and your mom doing?" The girl honestly said, "My mom is asleep. She asked me to see if we could borrow the laptop. She wants to count down to the new year with everyone in America." When they met, Rebecca spoke a basic English phrase, "Thank you." "My name is Rebecca, my daughter's name is Sue, and you?" He stared blankly at her. After that event, we still kept in touch. At first I told my real name was Park Caillou, but she kept mishearing it, so I just used my Viva nickname. At that time Park Caillou agreed, "Sure, borrow it. I'm hanging up now." Sue quickly stopped him. "Wait." The girl gathered all her courage and said, "Merry Christmas, Skeleton." In an instant, Park Caillou froze. His cold lips curved slightly. On the other end, he replied, "Merry Christmas. May you live 100 years, Sue." Then his computer notified someone had hung an ornament on Skelton's tree. A red dot appeared with the blessing, "Merry Christmas. Merry." You couldn't help but zoom in to take a closer look. The username was John Nenon. That name was engraved in Park Caillou's mind. Confusion appeared. He never thought he would see this name again. Who was it? Why was he contacting him? He knew this mysterious man. The opponent's figure seemed to emerge from the internet. Park Caillou coldly left a comment. Good. 945 days had passed. It was a community website for doomsday hopefuls, Viva Apocalypse. It operated through a dedicated satellite server. As long as it was related to the apocalypse, even illegal things could be posted. The largest global information forum with anonymous users from all over the world. Park Caillou lazily yawned once, that's what they said, so I joined. But to be honest, at first I couldn't even make a little money. There wasn't even any reason for me to pay to watch rich people fight with their piles of assets. I joined because I realized the power of a single person when preparing everything. But in this world nothing was really useful. I'd rather spend that money building another bunker. Park Caillou moved the mouse back and forth to read the information. Right then, something popped up. John Nenon, the importance and applications of decoy bunkers. In long-term survival situations, the benefits of decoy bunkers were many. You could connect them to the main bunker and use them for surveillance, or use them to defend against intruders. The more Park Caillou read, the more surprised he became. To prepare for the situation of being occupied by enemies, we could bury explosives inside. And we could control them with a trigger connected to the main bunker. He propped his hand against his chin and calculated. All the information was very useful. Even though the style was similar to his, this idea was far more advanced. He read the name slowly, John Nenon. Park Caillou's fingers slid back and forth. What the hell was this? The community seemed quite lively about this person. He had many creative ideas. Naturally, many speculations about his identity would also arise. Park Caillou sat browsing the internet for a while. He stared blankly, his eyes gradually sinking into emptiness. Park Caillou concluded. He responded to that in the way of the community. Looking at the card, he was surprised. Hunter. More than a year ago, a collapse phenomenon called the Rift appeared in the world. Not long after, strange creatures from another dimension appeared inside. They were called monsters, and governments gathered together to form a special unit to fight them. Their title was Hunters, professional-level monster hunters. A disaster class was discovered. The outbreak was beginning. While the hunters were careless, the monster had flown above them. But not everyone was unaware of its existence. A handgun was raised into the air first, followed by other heavy weapons. They rained bullets into the monster's mouth, and after a while it was blown to pieces. After killing a life, their faces did not change. The crack in the sky gradually opened wider. Park Caillou coldly said, "It's coming." The entire team quickly shifted into defensive positions. Another truth was revealed. The identities of the top hunters were national secrets. They were battle-hardened soldiers. Considering this license, it wasn't at that level yet. Anyway, a hunter's certificate had already raised his credibility. Knowledge provided by a professional. A hunter's license was like solid proof. Because of that, John Nenon became the most famous figure in the community. However, when news drew attention, its owner would also be monitored, as John Nenon gained influence. The appearance of haters was inevitable. They were ready to attack. On every post John Nenon uploaded, one account asked, "He doesn't even dare show his real face. Maybe everything is fake." Park Caillou thought their level was very low, so they couldn't affect his reputation. John Nenon wasn't stupid, so it was impossible for him to respond to that bunch. Suddenly, he stopped what he was doing. A mirror selfie appeared. He had responded, and it was completely different from what he expected. Who proves themselves with their real face? What a stupid idea. He looked too ordinary, like someone who liked seeking attention. The community's reaction was quite indifferent. In addition, John Ninon's hunter rank was revealed, only the lowest rank D. Park Caillou felt a bit regretful. He should have only written posts. Revealing his face had messed things up for him. But he didn't stop. That was what surprised him the most. The lines of conversation were appearing more and more. The post title shocked him, organizing a meetup that proved he was trying to salvage everything. 600 days before the apocalypse. At a local bar in Korea, Sang Hayu smiled brightly and introduced, I am John Nenon on the community, and currently a hunter. Nice to meet everyone. Park Caillou remembered clearly, 10 people had come, including himself. Sang Hayu ordered food, 9 limited pork servings. I'm on a diet, so don't worry about me. The owner replied, annoyed. Right now there are 10 people. According to the restaurant rules, you need to order 1 portion for everyone. Finally, Sang Hayu stammered, please enjoy the meal. And even though he was on a diet, when the food was served he still decided to eat it all. Otherwise it would have been quite a waste. After all, it was his own money. Seeing that, the older men thought he came to freeload, so they clicked their tongues and left early. His face darkened, listening to the other. Soon, a war will break out. The one to start the war may be China. There were too many rifts on their territory. They caused too many major problems. Moreover, because of internal division, control from the capital was a big issue. He was quite disappointed. This information even someone who tried to research would know, and it was half a year outdated. Then he asked, who are you? Park Caillou honestly replied, my nickname is Skeleton. Sang Hayu curiously asked further, how's the bunker building going? He continued, a bit difficult. I couldn't find a company that built fuel tanks. He lowered his head, avoiding communication with those around. He didn't expect anything from this guy who lacked social ability to solve his problem. Right then, Sang Hayu inquired, can I see it? He explained casually, what can I do if I don't have any information? Park Caillou found it hard to come up with an excuse for himself. Seeing no response, he continued to affirm, everyone says you can connect with people worldwide in 6 different levels. If I can take a look, I'll definitely find it. Boss, it's me. I'm just looking for a company that can build a fuel tank. After that, he stood in front of the fuel tank for a long time. His mouth unconsciously muttered, it works. Thanks to his help I could upgrade the bunker to the next level. Although the first impression was a bit surprising, he was really useful, especially among that group. After that, John Nenon's meetups continued. The last one reached 80 people. Park Caillou had decided. More and more people came, but they only said useless things. I shouldn't go anymore. Right then, Sang Hayu politely asked, can I have some time to talk? They went out behind the shop. In that situation, he was quite confused. What was this? He tried to suppress his drunkenness, slowly called Mr. Skeleton. Perhaps because it was a difficult issue to talk about, he was still hesitant. After a long time, Sang Hayu finally added a bit more. I have a question. His eyes slowly glanced at him. Could it be? At him. Mr. Skeleton, are you a hunter? Park Caillou looked surprised and answered, me. He honestly admitted, I feel like I've seen you somewhere before, right? I think that's really the case. Park Caillou hesitated for a moment. He looked down at his feet to avoid it. His reason spoke to him. I could make up some excuse, but then. In the end, Park Caillou hesitantly said, actually. Unexpectedly, the person next to him was no longer standing there. Inside the restaurant, everyone was very lively. Someone from the television station came to see you. A reporter wants to interview you, Sang Hayu. Seeing him hesitate, someone asked, why? Do you have something to say to that person? If it's not urgent, then say it later. Go do the interview first. Hurry up. Sang Hayu vaguely spoke up. That's Mr. Skeleton. The crowd excitedly responded. Who is that? What could be more important than the interview now? He paused for a moment because he couldn't find any reason. So Sang Hayu had to let it go too. It wasn't that important. Just someone who looked like a person I once met. He stepped out with the cheers of the others. Park Caillou silently watched them. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the hunter John Nenon. And just like that, that was their last meeting in real life. Since then, John Nenon had succeeded. He strengthened his position by being featured on many different programs as a member of Viva and an apocalypse expert. Gradually, Sang Hayu began to teach, taking advantage of the reputation he had gained as a doomsday seller. The business card was changed to CEO Sang Hayu. And furthermore, he began doing consulting business for the wealthy about doomsday preparation. They were at a large construction site. Park Caillou remarked, like people rowing strongly when the tide rises. Apocalypse Viva, he thought of that social network. It was the main contribution to Sang Hayu's success. He followed those who worshipped him, and was convinced that they would completely follow him. But then one day, that faith, eventually, the phone displayed a message. Secretary Kim, it's urgent. There's an article accusing you. It led to the downfall of Sang Hayu. They all cursed. You stole information from the European Bulletin Board, didn't you? The truth was, through verification and thorough investigation by the Cybersecurity Investigation Unit of the detective community, a completely different level from the previous online attacks. The bubble of John Lennon burst. The curses grew. He always talked about becoming a hunter without providing certificates, acted like an expert but turned out to be a fraud. There was proof of fraud. He had even filed for personal bankruptcy 2 years earlier, a legendary swindler. Park Caillou had to admit one thing: I hated him, so I was very happy when it all ended. Sudden success also led to rapid collapse, and due to the anonymity of the community, the purge trend made everything worse. Instead of defending himself against countless doubts and criticisms, Sang Hayu left a short, furious comment in the History of Apocalypse Viva community. The content had only 2 meager words: bastard. He sighed as if he had unloaded all burdens, and with that, the name John Lennon of the Apocalypse Viva forum. The complaint form lying on the table, also a sign of the end. Park Caillou's gaze was cold without a trace of emotion. He remembered one last piece of information. The complaint units had completely evaporated due to the nuclear explosion before they could make any judgment. What I worry about now is the person who left this here, linking me with John Lennon. Just a random coincidence, or was it really John Lennon? Nothing is certain. He investigated it himself before the desk. Park Caillou quickly typed a line: Fox Game. The system recorded his action. Fox Game, I have something to ask. Could you tell me who left the message on my tree? The other asked back, why do you want to know? And in fact, Fox Game was also a former game developer and hacker. He was the one who developed the Christmas tree game. He tilted his head, thinking a bit. At that time, I didn't know. Just out of today's simple curiosity. Then, the other replied, found it, nickname right, 180 centimeters. A few words on the screen made his face colder. After that, Park Caillou began texting, who are you? I've never seen you before. And that led to this encounter. In the room, the radio sounded reminding Park Caillou, even in a destroyed world, the existence of a nation was still very important. Although countless people had died and many cities were devastated. He adjusted the volume knob of the transmitter. The system of South Korea was still intact. He went to a corner of the room and counted. Food and water for 3 days were ready. At the same time, his thoughts went further. Of course, that did not mean there would be hope. It only meant there was still a little time left before complete destruction. However, as long as the concept of nation existed, we had to make use of it somehow. That was why Park Caillou settled near major cities. He raised his hand, looking at himself. Fashion, the thing I always wore. Park Caillou left the bunker after the surroundings had been somewhat cleared. He gloomily looked around. Let's go. Heading to the capital Seoul after this devastation. 1.5 years after the destruction. As he headed there, nothing special happened, but he felt the complex and conflicting emotions of the ruined city, the nostalgia and the vanished scenery. Meanwhile, the Seoul sign appeared. Park Caillou froze, a melancholy feeling from his sweaty feet, and ironically, his eyebrows furrowed. Beggars were sitting on both sides of the road, the feeling of relief at being a survivor. When looking at the corner of the road nearby, he saw piles of corpses stacked. The cleanup workers threw down a spark. Then, all returned to nothingness. The light from the flames shone on his face. while the sunlight peeked behind the old building. At that place there was a signboard, National Crisis Recovery Committee of South Korea. Seeing him enter, the woman lazily spoke up. Please submit a general complaint or report a crime through another door. At that moment, Park Kyu proposed, I want to meet Director Lee Sang-hoon. He placed a card on the table. Then, he spoke up to confirm, I know he is currently in charge of disaster relief. Tell him it's Park Kyu, who once studied at the military academy with him. He will recognize me. He didn't forget to show a goodwill smile. Everything shifted to the disaster response headquarters, which was also the agency responsible for managing all matters related to risks and restoring the nation's situation. At present, this was also the most important administrative center. The graduates of the Hunter Academy were all working in high-ranking positions. At that moment, the female staff spoke up. So you are an acquaintance of the director. Please wait a moment. On the contrary, he was feeling very desperate. Sang-hoon probably wouldn't meet him, but he really wanted to see him. Now the receptionist thought they were close. When the receptionist went inside, he would quietly slip in. Just then, someone else approached him. May I talk to you for a bit? He explained, the situation at the front lines now you must also understand. Everything is getting more brutal. Therefore, the combat force is gradually declining. Park Kyu bluntly replied, I understand, but I've already been discharged. I won't go back there. The situation at the front lines being brutal was too clear for him. This war would drag on, therefore everyone had to think about it. The soldiers suffered more and more casualties. Though lacking, they still chose people with real ability to fight instead of the weak. Now they were always promoting for skilled people to join the army. He was extremely sarcastic. Even so, eventually you die anyway, therefore I have absolutely no intention to participate. He continued to ask, I heard you used to be a hunter, right? At the moment of raising his head, he saw Park Kyu pretending to be in pain. Then, he asked back, did Director Lee Sang-hoon send you here to ask me those things? Unexpectedly, he honestly said, it was Commissioner Kim Da-ran who sent me. The atmosphere between them instantly fell silent. After a while, Park Kyu hurriedly asked, so the commissioner is in the disaster headquarters. The truth was this name surprised him. In the past, Park Kyu irritably shouted, don't bother about what others think of you. If your actions achieve good results, then people will overlook it. You know, in this world, that's exactly how it is. Back to the present, she was reading documents in the office. Seeing him enter, Da-ran gently spoke, long time no see. Looking at his face, she gathered all her courage to call, Senior Park Kyu. I already understand your nature, so I'll say this quickly. I very much need you present in the army to destroy the monsters. Park Kyu cleverly shifted. I think that would be hard for me. I want to ask why you would propose such a thing. Da-ran coldly pressed. Do you want to shirk your duty to the country? He frankly retorted, before we agreed that once leaving we wouldn't return. Da-ran stubbornly replied, Senior's words I completely understand. But do you think it's still suitable in this situation, when the monsters have invaded everywhere? Park Kyu thought to himself, indeed what I wanted before, and now we're completely different. He continued to refuse, I've been discharged, I don't want to return. Da-ran then said that was because Lee Sang-hoon asked her. Hearing that, Park Kyu was quite curious. Why would Lee Sang-hoon say so? Da-ran lowered her eyes to avoid his gaze. The director has no hostility toward you. This is the time we should unite. Right then, Park Kyu cut her off. It seems you now have status and reputation. You're different from before. Da-ran tried to return to the main subject. The difficulties at the front lines you also clearly understand. Why won't you contribute to the country? Those who were once very close now together created a cold atmosphere. In his mind, he gradually drew the scenes of brutality. The war situation. I've completely understood it. More precisely, I've understood the dangers of fighting at the front. He hid his fist inside his sleeve. Then, Da-ran softly spoke. Sorry. You know the Papong Corporation, right? Its chairman will personally lead his employees to fight the monsters. However, their strength and experience are insufficient, so they have requested our reinforcements. but currently headquarters does not have enough capacity to do so. Could you help us with this? After surviving and returning, I won't ask you to fight at the front again. Park Caillou did not want any further conversation. Da-ran had to try to continue. Thank you. Her eyes carried complex emotions. She couldn't help but say, everyone may have changed, but you are still as good as before. I will contact you in detail later. Scene change. After the world collapsed, what would happen to the great corporations? This was the subject people were very curious about. Garrelaway had discovered a hideout of Chairman Cheoljun. Of course, speaking of their economic strength, what they did was their right. Park Caillou couldn't help but sigh. Looking in detail from the plane, everything could be seen. Of course, when you have too much money, then doing such things is simple. Back in the past, he had devoted half his life to the military and left with nothing. Later, thanks to his knowledge, he built a shelter for himself. In a post-apocalyptic world like this, the billionaires with money doing such things was not wrong. Most other rich people did the same. As usual, he received the detailed proposal of fighting against monsters from Papong Corporation. When faced with responsibility, Park Caillou also had to respond promptly. Now the time had come for him to have an appointment with their chairman. It had been a month since he met Da-ran. This modern building had once been designed by world-famous architects. But the apocalypse came too quickly, therefore construction had to stop. Now the troublesome issue was that he had to climb to the 55th floor by construction elevator. Park Caillou was extremely irritated. The atmosphere above was even colder. Finally, the luxurious room appeared. This was the place only those of the upper class could live and work. He stepped inside. Countless people were already waiting. That made Park Caillou sigh. Even after the apocalypse, nothing had changed. He modestly waited for others to speak first. At that time, Park Caillou inwardly blamed. Someone came without even turning to look. An employee card. But in this situation, what use was such a card? Working in the corporation, I couldn't imagine what they would do. Then, a polite man asked, "You used to be a hunter, right?" Park Caillou bowed and reached out his hand, but he only continued his work. "May we know your previous rank?" Park Caillou was a bit disgusted. Why ask so directly? Finally, he replied that he was rank D. Within a minute after that, he kept questioning him. Park Caillou mechanically answered, because everything he said had been prepared in advance. The real information had already been erased, so it was no problem. After a while, he stopped satisfied. "I see. Please wait here a moment." Park Caillou looked at him judgmentally. Truly a typical office worker. Even after the apocalypse, working was so by the book. I've come, then I only need to do my part well. This would surely be a difficult task for me because headquarters didn't even have enough people to help, so I needed to be careful and not respond perfunctorily. While he was pondering, Young Hee appeared. "I heard you used to be a hunter in the army." Park Caillou truly felt very annoyed. One questioner wasn't enough, and now another appeared. On this side, Young Hee began recounting. The area managed by the corporation had a group of radiation-infected monsters causing chaos. Therefore, we needed to eliminate them. Lacking experience, we requested help from headquarters. They sent you. Surely you have experience. Those sent to fight in that area had all died. This mission is quite difficult. Sounds painful, right? Now in the post-apocalyptic situation, everyone only cared for themselves. Yet still many had to sacrifice for the company. She lowered her eyes, avoiding letting emotions surge. After steadying, Young Hee inwardly blamed. In a world like this, what does loyalty to the corporation return? Everyone is truly suffering. Park Caillou was silent. He did not answer her. On the contrary, Young Hee gathered courage to speak. "I want to ask a favor. In the complex area where the monsters were wreaking havoc is my father. Please, save him. Jai Chang-su is my father's name. He also fought in the defense force and was present in this battle. I know he is still alive, but now the situation is too dangerous. I beg you to save him. I will do anything to repay you. Please bring my father back." At that moment, someone interrupted them. "Hey, Mr. Park." A line of staff appeared. "Let's go." He asked blankly. "I just arrived. Where are we going?" He implicitly answered, "You'll know when we get there." Park Caillou was about to step, but then stopped. He pondered, looking at the business card. Though she asked for help, I'll say this first. It might not turn out as she wants. Because hunters are only human after all. Park Caillou recalled some things. In the apocalypse, the economy of South Korea almost collapsed. Maritime trade was almost abolished. Although there were still many companies that could hold on, it could be said everything seemed to have already been predetermined. Papung Corporation was no exception. Previously, the company had mobilized a great deal of advanced equipment to its factories. This could be called good preparation for what was happening in the post-apocalyptic world. There were many next-generation tanks. One would not think they had such a strong economic foundation to build their own private army. Then, someone entered through the door. Luckily, I arrived in time. I am the advisor for this campaign, a former hunter and member of the National Assembly, Park Sang-min. Very pleased to meet everyone here. Park Caillou judged him. Indeed, many hunters had adapted quite quickly. He was just over 40 and already a member of the National Assembly. Truly impressive. Moments later, the sound of a hand slamming on the table echoed. This battle is quite important. We need to deploy combat forces for a preemptive strike. Another person reported. According to investigations, the monsters now number more than 1,000. Furthermore, due to not yet gathering enough experienced hunters, the chairman had delayed for over a month. He angrily said, in that 1 month, the monsters may have lessened. Though their lifespan is limited, we currently cannot determine the situation inside. Indeed, postponing the previous offensive by a month also reduced the risk for our soldiers. But after that 1 month, I think they have decreased because there was nothing to absorb. Those small monsters diminished, then our pressure would also lighten. The skeletal demons would fight alone. In that way, using armored tanks to advance inside would be fairly safe. Yet some others opposed. It seems he is rather confident. Those monsters, though I don't fully understand them, clearly cannot simply die off. He is a hunter, therefore there are things he knows more than us. Finally, all attention turned in one direction. So what is the chairman's opinion about this campaign? Peng Ho pensively glanced to one side. He spoke in a deep voice. This offensive is quite important. If we can use all our resources to exterminate the monsters, that would be good. At that time we can save time, human lives, and money. From a hidden corner, he was still watching Sang-min. He was rather young, but had quite a lot of experience. With his all-out attack strategy based on the assumption that the monsters had weakened. On the surface it was correct. Nevertheless, I also must admit what he said carried a high level of persuasiveness. Thus, in the thoughts of everyone, he had enough capability to lead. Next, Sang-min lightly raised his voice. By the way, that hunter over there, you were sent here by the Disaster Management Department, right? I guess you also have experience. What do you think about this strategy? Park Caillou slightly raised his head, but did not answer. Sang-min smiled with expectation, lips curling. Then, Park Caillou honestly replied, what you said is partly right, but I think we need to consider and verify again. The look of disappointment was clear on his face. What? Park Caillou continued giving explanations. Though they have limited lifespan, by now after a long time without absorbing anything, they are weaker. But before dying they often enter a hibernation state like bears. Of course, hibernation only lasts for a while. If they cannot find nourishment, they will die. But currently the industrial complex is too large, involving many residential areas, that is nourishment for them. So we cannot judge whether they have weakened or not. Therefore, before the offensive we need to look at another aspect. You were sent here to help. Even if the strategy is wrong, it has nothing to do with you. But Park Caillou did not want people to lose their lives because of one mistake. Therefore, he proactively gave his opinion. The lives of the people here are like yours. No one deserves to die. In the meeting room, he continued, as for the tanks, I have another thought. When using tanks, they will cause loud noise. The monsters are very sensitive to sound. They could swarm in and attack all at once. Moreover, the current situation cannot allow such an assault because we don't yet have clear information about the industrial complex. Park Caillou had not finished speaking when Sang-min harshly raised his voice. I've understood your opinion. But what you said I already considered. What you say is just from books. Reality is different. Park Caillou was not afraid to respond. You may be a former hunter, but the battle plan you proposed is far too unsound. If so, how can we win? Sang Min furiously shouted. You're talking too much. What do you have to prove I'm wrong? Are you looking down on someone like me? Park Caillou dejectedly stared into the void. What I say is only in hopes of helping everyone. And it seemed it already had an effect on the chairman. Then the tactical situation could change accordingly. He quietly passed by Chang Su. After that, Park Caillou placed a hand on his shoulder. He found a corner with no one, then whispered, Your daughter asked me to help you this time, so when danger comes, if I shout you must run. Afterwards, since there was no more time, the chairman still decided to attack. The number of monsters was far beyond expectation. Furthermore, moving with tanks had attracted them. Tank number 1 had already overturned. Moreover, machine guns, though fired, caused no harm to them. Sang Min panicked and shouted, Use the flamethrowers. The radio crackled. The situation ahead is abnormal. It cannot be like this. He furiously screamed back, Report quickly. Speak. What are you screaming for like that? Finally, a grotesque figure reflected in his eyes. What? A skeletal demon? Weren't they supposed to be tiny according to the report? This was also an extremely dangerous type of monster. At present there was no way to handle it, especially since it was so huge. The skeletal demon looked at them like puny creatures. From afar, Park Caillou signaled, Retreat. Chang Su bewilderedly looked toward the sound behind. He quickly explained, Right now we cannot possibly win. Some time later, Dao Ran met him. Thank you for coming there to help. So now the chairman knows it is impossible and won't trouble the association anymore. After that battle, he thought a lot. Now he wants to meet you. Do you know what he wants to say? Inside, Park Caillou was also very curious. What made the chairman pay attention to me? From my guess, he wants a new commander, wants me to replace Park Sang-min. Thus I could refuse, but I am quite curious. I want to see the end of a great Korean corporation. To see how it ends its era in this post-apocalyptic world. While dining, Peng Ho calmly said, I've reviewed your record, though not much. Through the recent campaign you have shown yourself to be talented. Park Caillou avoided, but Peng Ho directly remarked, You are very capable. After thorough investigation I heard that Lee Sang-hoon back then was not even as good as you. Furthermore, in the past, when still a hunter, you together with Captain Kang Han-min and Na Hai-in, those were legendary hunters recognized by everyone even to this day. Hearing that, he was paralyzed. He frankly proposed, I want to recruit you into the corporation. You will have full authority to direct the campaigns. Park Caillou forcefully put down the knife. I understand already, but now I am retired, therefore I cannot. Peng Ho affirmed, what I do is also for the people. I plan to launch another assault on that industrial complex. That one statement drew his attention. He continued, I am the son of a concubine. By right I should not inherit this corporation, but by my own ability I did. The world has reached the apocalypse. Many advised me to give up, but for the future of the employees and their families I cannot. Therefore I put all my effort into this campaign. I hope you will help me as well as help them. I hope you will command this campaign, smash all those monsters and liberate the industrial complex. Park Caillou only saw one thing. He was too stubborn, but also for his employees. Perhaps also for his own interests, but still, in the end, it was something good. His stubbornness made me somewhat thoughtful. Park Caillou chose compromise. I will show you my way, but whether it succeeds or not I cannot be sure. As we saw before, the giant skeletal demon, that thing absorbed corpses and formed. It could be considered a mutated monster. The corporation's battle created a great stir, though it failed. The list of the dead was published. Because facing monsters humans are but tiny creatures. Park Caillou silently breathed relief, not seeing Jai Chang Su's name. Surely he was safe. But what the press published, he still did not give up. With such a defeat, he still stubbornly clung to his decision. He looked at that man, unbelievable. In this era when the wealthy had all withdrawn into hiding, Peng Ho still tried to do the most beneficial thing he could for his employees. But in the end that too could not bring a good outcome. Nevertheless, at present he still led his employees. Those who trusted him went to work, but in another role. Scene change. A person is feeding stray cats. Park Caillou, quite curious, stopped. In the end, he reminded her, "You must not feed those cats anymore. It's very dangerous. There have already been many fatal cases." Hidden behind her sunglasses was half of a face with veins bulging. After that, she shyly turned away. From beginning to end, Park Caillou never took his eyes off her. This made him reflect a little. Most accidents are caused by humans, and most of them could have been prevented. Therefore, this case of feeding cats, in a sense, is also a human-caused accident that could have been avoided. Park Caillou gradually let his memories take over. Thinking back, it was hard to believe. But at the time when the Chinese government still stood firm, Korea had to send a team of hunters to the neighboring country to stop the monsters from flooding across. A unit of hunters was dispatched. The cause of the monster's appearance was the space gates. India, the first country where a gate appeared, had collapsed, and the surrounding countries were quickly devastated. From India to Southeast Asia, then China, and their next target was them. During the time he was sent to China, Park Caillou accidentally discovered a mutated rat. It happened in creatures living near the spatial rift, and thanks to that science discovered the phenomenon of mutation. Park Caillou sternly said, "It's very dangerous. Do you want to be eaten by them?" The woman irritably replied, "My business, leave me alone." He tried to remain calm, many times warning her whenever he encountered her, but she never cared. "Fine then, suit yourself, you're already grown." Today, he had created quite an ugly cat. Park Caillou sighed and muttered to himself, "Hopefully nothing will happen." Meanwhile, on the other end of the line, a voice spoke, "Senior, it's me, Da Ran." That sound was enough to dampen his mood. She skillfully began, "Sorry to bother you again, but I have something to ask." Park Caillou angrily asked, "Didn't you say you wouldn't ask for anything anymore?" She awkwardly replied, "But the situation is urgent, and it also concerns you. Near the Air Force base where you are, there's an old apartment building. There are reports of mutation phenomena. This is something only you can handle." Park Caillou was deeply dejected. He really had a bad feeling already. Da Ran briefly recounted. "A few stray cats mutated and attacked people. The casualties have not been tallied, and the survivors don't dare go outside." Park Caillou looked for an excuse. "I don't hunt mutated monsters anymore. I don't have anything." She immediately said she would send a specialist. Hearing that, Park Caillou was a bit curious. Da Ran explained, "A hunter. A freelance hunter." And then, the car stopped in front of his house. Seung Hyun appeared very polite. "Hello. You're the one contacted by the National Association, right? My name is Baek Seung Hyun." He extended his hand. Park Caillou, out of courtesy, introduced himself as well. "I'm a former hunter, taking on a supporting role this time." Immediately, the other party seemed displeased. Finally, Seung Hyun exposed him. "You're Park Caillou, aren't you? The legendary member of the 13th class. I also studied at the same school as you, class 12. Never thought I'd meet you here. For people like me, doing side jobs to survive is normal. But a legend like you, why would you bury yourself here?" Right after, Park Caillou got on his bicycle. He replied in a low voice, "Save it for later." The man looked at him awkwardly, "Sorry." Then they moved to the apartment. The floor had absorbed several pools of fresh blood. Park Caillou stopped and asked, "What about this one?" The land before him had turned into a bloody horror painting. Seung Hyun casually said, "So that's how it is. On my way here I passed by the scene. Looks like it tasted human blood. It lunged at me immediately. But after all, it's just a cat. Took a few bullets and ran off." Park Caillou silently assessed him. Hunting alone without any support must have extraordinary skill and ability to pull that off. At least in a rank hunter. If Baek Seung Hyun were my teammate, I'd rate him a rank. Then he recounted an encounter with a mutated cat. "If things went smoothly, I could have handled them myself already." Seung Hyun pulled out an explosive block. He explained, "I intended to lure them into one place and blow them up with C4. But someone blocked my action. His words made Park Kyu think of the old woman feeding cats. Seung Hyun sadly continued, now finding their hideout will take a lot of time. Park Kyu quietly observed the surroundings. That night, he told his companion, I know where their hideout is. On a deserted road, a middle-aged voice called out, Hermes, Gucci, my babies, it's dinner time. Park Kyu chose a hidden spot to observe her. He did this because he followed a hunch. She lived nearby, often fed those cats. If she still did that, then surely they would appear there. A moment later, a hairy figure emerged from the bushes. She joyfully exclaimed, Oh my beloved children! You're here. As she spoke, the old woman feeding cats made beckoning gestures. Park Kyu saw Seung Hyun signaling him, so he nodded as confirmation. Next, weapons were quickly drawn. The two surrounded her from opposite sides. The mutated cats cautiously retreated. Park Kyu slowly approached one of them. No mercy took place, he fired directly. The firepower impact killed one on the spot. The old woman screamed in pain, Stop! On this side, the strays wanted to counterattack. Behind Park Kyu was still the screaming voice, Don't shoot! A claw strike appeared but missed. In a kneeling stance he ended its life. The huge body collapsed to the ground. She shrieked angrily, Why did you do that? My children are very good. Meanwhile, another man ran this way. Seung Hyun informed him, It's done. He threw a block of explosive prepared earlier. By instinct she ran to shield the stray cats. In the moment close to death, she drifted back into the past. That year, she desperately pounded on the door. But they left her outside. All that remained was the strays nearby. The old woman then trudged after them. They had found a warehouse. From then on the cats became her only friends. Years passed, they were still together. At that moment an explosion ended it all. The two silently watched the flames erase everything. In the end, Park Kyu reproached him, Such sloppy work. Seung Hyun forced a smile at his companion. He coldly replied, Because this is a world that does not allow the existence of such things. Pastimes that could be said to be pointless, for example. The failure of a corporation and everything that follows it is somewhat like an airplane in flight encountering a malfunction. The engine breaks down, but it can still fly for a while. That is precisely its inertia. Of course, at some point it will fall and crash into the ground. The airplane soared across the sky. Park Kyu looked up at it in awe. Recently I've been seeing more and more of these airplanes. Perhaps the outbreak of the apocalypse will soon unfold. Humans are creatures that need rest to recover. That is a basic need, not something evil. Recreational activities help people feel comfortable and also help us live with more purpose in this apocalyptic world. In a way, this activity of Park Kyu's could also be considered a form of entertainment. That was following the news. He even comfortably commented, Delicious noodles. News from everywhere was always being posted. And for those who grasped information, there was always readiness to deal with surprises, people who always saw everything in the most positive light. In the apocalypse, everything leads to some kind of consequence. Relationships are nearly gone, so this became the channel for people to connect with one another. Park Kyu remembered clearly. This community had already developed, but after the apocalypse, it developed to the extreme. You could write anything on the forum. You could suggest topics you liked or disliked. When a post gained many likes, it was put on the front page. Then it would gain more attention. Park Kyu was no exception. In this forum, he registered as a member with the nickname Skeleton. Recently, he also had many posts featured on the front page. The most recent was about Chairman Peng Ho, the failed monster assault at the industrial zone. His posts always summarized so everyone could follow easily. That style of writing helped them access the events more easily. The meeting with the chairman was also a topic everyone longed to learn about. Thereby Park Kyu's name had become quite well known, and his posts gained more recognition. However, during this time there was one post that caught the community's attention. He suddenly exclaimed, This post stirred everyone into a frenzy. It was about a lottery ticket. When you registered to participate in reconstruction of facilities or services, You would receive goods and items along with a lottery ticket. Every 3 days there would be a drawing at a designated location. This was a way to give people desire and make them more active in social activities. The drawing became more known and supported. The prizes were only valuable items. If you could stockpile them, you would suffer less hunger later. And the first prize was a unit in the future settlement apartments. There was a separate food distribution system, full electricity and water, security sufficient to handle the worst situations. It could be said only tycoons could buy those apartments, and people talked a lot about it at that time. At first, everyone only wanted to get such an apartment, but then it became something that obsessed them, no longer a simple desire. The winner of the drawing appeared. That person's nickname on the forum was M9. Naturally, everyone wanted to know the truth of the matter. Park Kyu remembered meeting this person once at a city council meeting. The other was an ordinary man, focused on his food and not communicating. Even so, he made everyone admire him, and because of that the drawing and the lottery issue spread widely. Park Kyu had some strange thoughts, but then thought, wasn't he too lucky? After winning the lottery he changed a lot. The account named M9 continuously boasted, I want to move there quickly. I'm sick of living in the basement. How could I have lived underground all this time? Gradually the words became filled with hostility. Surviving down here I struggled enough. Now I've changed my life. Don't be jealous of me. Just keep dreaming. One day you'll be like me. A negative mood weighed heavily on the other accounts. Those words infuriated the community. People were very angry that M9 was so lucky. Park Kyu doubted this. He spent much time thinking. Even things like repairing roads or public works required community support. So where would the Disaster Response Headquarters and Hunter Association get manpower and wealth to build such apartments, and then give them to the lucky ones? In Korea now, after the apocalypse, that was completely impossible. Surely they had put forth bait to lure others. After that, Park Kyu called Da Ran. When she picked up, he bluntly said, I want to ask one thing. So what is this Hope lottery ticket? Is there really an apartment? On the other side, Da Ran quietly lit a cigarette. She casually replied, it's only a dream. Around her a party was going on. The participants were all upper class. Da Ran relaxed her body and announced, the headquarters is preparing to move to Jeju Island. At the latest by spring we'll be there. An airplane soared across the night sky. She coldly declared, here in Seoul you could say everything has officially ended. This is just for you to know. Don't tell anyone else. Park Kyu lay down in disappointment. Just as I thought. There's no hope. The capital has been abandoned because it couldn't be saved. However, where I live now is not Seoul. But I truly regret having to live forever in a shelter, unable to tell day from night, everyone only wishing to survive as long as possible. Still, this place is not far from Seoul, so I had thought a lot when this apartment appeared. But reality is too cruel. She said not to reveal it to anyone. Park Kyu was extremely conflicted. Should I tell the whole community and crush their hope? What they are yearning for day and night. What they dream of could collapse when they learn the truth. Everything is just an illusion created by the association. If I write this news, my post will become the hottest topic and at the same time shatter the association's credibility along with those dreams. He gloomily sat before his computer, so tired. In the end, Park Kyu endured and did not write it out. Scene change. On the vehicle were some seedlings. These are what I found, indoor farming tools. Then, a black bag was handed over. All right. Check your goods. Park Kyu thought to himself. In the apocalypse, these are as precious as gold. Basically, they are also a kind of currency for trade. The other man glanced and nodded. That's it. Next, another person spoke. Why are there so many people here? What time is food distribution so we can know? I want to work to get a lottery ticket. A woman scolded. Be patient. Everyone gets a share equally. Seeing him curious, a man explained. They're people who want apartments, so they registered to work. For some reason they formed groups and considered themselves superior. Now they talk as if they already won apartments. In Park Kyu's ears was the sound of arguing. Today it's finished. The rations are gone. The crowd grew furious. We've waited so long. Where is the fairness? If you do this, we'll starve. The chaos increased. Open the door and see if the truck has food or not. A long line of frenzied humans trampled one another behind the vehicle. Nearby were the manager and a few kind residents. Park Caillou coldly observed the whole quarrel. You are driving us to our deaths. The women began lamenting. If rations are cut further, there will be turmoil, and rent for water and electricity will rise. How can we live like this? Darkness engulfed his mind. Truly, this was the worst news lately. Life was already hard. Now hope was also vanishing. Finally, the radio sounded. You have a notification. Skeleton, your post is being uploaded to the forum. Its content is as follows. I have a source saying the apartment thing is just a trick. Nothing is real. Hopes gained, then lost, dragging despair and emptiness. A rough hand pressed the keyboard. Park Caillou was utterly desperate. What will life become if things keep going as they are? This is a question no one knows. Yet life still must go on. Everything, whether hardship or happiness, is always ahead of us. This time it will be about egoism and nihilism. A desperate sound rang out. I gave up being a hunter. That is the essence of the apocalypse. Kyung Min angrily shouted, Hey Park Caillou. I know you have been through a lot, but are you doing this because you don't understand the current situation? Don't you think of the children, those who have been watching and trusting you? Can't you rest and then come back? I will look into it, and with your contributions, I am sure the higher-ups will approve. So please endure. And after that, Park Caillou could not help but respond. Do you really think so? Do you really think that if I stay, the situation will change? No, the truth is that because I endured, my subordinates also stayed and could not escape. This hellish life, since that day, the monsters are lining up like an army. Park Caillou's eyes were filled with fear. He emphasized each word. Anyone who goes to the front line knows that everything is over. Don't stop me anymore. After that, Kyung Min softened his tone. All right, I heard it's raining heavily outside. Remember to bring an umbrella. Park Caillou silently looked at his comrade. After turning away, he finally had the courage to advise, live well from now on. Since the day Park Caillou left his comrades behind, he had lived like this, building a shelter and surviving. And because Park Caillou survived, his thoughts had not changed. The extinction of mankind cannot be stopped. His mind trembled. The feeling of despair overwhelmed him before the enemy. The trembling and helplessness went far beyond despair. The feeling of absolute hopelessness had not faded. Therefore, every effort of Park Caillou was a futile attempt to keep living. That day, he was surprised when he saw the name Paju. That was the first area in the country where rifts appeared. If you sense a local earthquake near a rift, there is a high possibility of the appearance of a giant species. At that time, Park Caillou was bringing out his bicycle. His mind was busy with thoughts. If that is true, the defense committee must be in chaos. The destructive power of the giant species is like a natural disaster, theoretically impossible to stop. Luckily, they are very weak to Earth's environment, so they start to decompose as soon as they appear. The larger the size, the faster the decomposition. So the best way is to predict their path and avoid them. Park Caillou always remembered, like avoiding a storm. He deliberately looked up at the sky today. The sunlight reminded him of something. The weather forecast was necessary. After that, incidents began to happen in the city. The phone was immediately picked up. This is the Defense Committee. How may I help you? Send that information to the Response Committee. Connect me urgently to the person in charge of the front line. When Park Caillou arrived, his heart sank a little. The committee was even more chaotic than he thought. At that moment, an employee bumped into him. Sorry. After being helped, the other replied, Thank you. Finally, that employee continued being busy with his work. Park Caillou accidentally glanced at some documents. Clear images of the kraken octopus were captured. His face was full of caution. Until now, it was still the most common species. It usually took the form of a giant octopus monster. But when it felt threatened, it transformed into an armored form. The dangerous part was what was called the death ray released from that armored form. If you are in the path of that ray, it pierces defenses and disintegrates all organic life along its path. When it appeared in Tokyo recently, it disintegrated more than 50,000 people before declining in Nagano Prefecture. Its predicted path went through Park Kayu's area. If he hadn't noticed, he might have been dead long ago. Right then, on the upper floor, someone appeared. Dao Ran also seemed to be looking this way. Her pupils immediately locked in. The two of them exchanged only distant glances. Park Kayu pondered, I should have gone to Jeju Island, but this will delay my plan. Dao Ran spoke while looking at him, evacuate. That octopus is hard to deal with. Because its path goes near Senior's shelter, I advise you to leave early. Park Kayu was a little surprised, still insisting he could evacuate. Then he returned to his shelter, quickly gathering emergency supplies. Right after that, he accidentally saw the computer. A thought appeared, stopping all his actions. Dao Ran coldly said, evacuate. Senior, you should leave early. That made him decide, I should tell them to evacuate. After that, the account skeleton posted a monster warning, but it only had 2 views. Park Kayu asked in frustration, completely buried. Is this not enough to attract attention? Anyway, I'm done here, it's time to evacuate. Then, Sue called, long time no see. Uncle, what are you doing? Park Kayu quickly reminded, you have a truck, right? Tell your mother to evacuate. Unfortunately, the girl said, the truck is broken. Rebecca explained, the engine isn't working. Sue asked blankly, but what happened? Can't I just hide in the building? He felt very confused. Their building was in the north, where the octopus was heading. Not enough time to evacuate. It was no different from facing bandits. There was no reward for me. Sorry, but I can't sacrifice myself. He hinted, go as far south as possible. I'm hanging up. Sue innocently replied, take care, all right. Tomorrow it's forecasted to rain a lot. Be careful not to get wet. In the cold space, only he remained. Park Kayu tried to convince himself, in a world that has ended, being swayed by emotions is a luxury. But a voice from long ago echoed, it's raining outside, make sure you bring an umbrella. And then, Park Kayu immediately called them. He hurriedly announced, I'll be there in 30 minutes, prepare with your mother and wait for me to come. Park Kayu moved with all his strength. Sue. His steps were urgent. In 30 seconds the uncle would arrive. Prepare with mom and sit waiting. At that moment, he tried to recall. A pair of mutant dogs lived in the area between their building, also his own territory. But perhaps he cared more about Rebecca and Sue. Then Park Kayu tried to calm himself. There was no more time. He reached for an item, so then, the strongest magazine was loaded. Park Kayu tried the finishing move. I will cut across. Scene change. A pack of wild dogs was frantically running. Their target was the yellow car. Park Kayu both drove and drew his gun. He aimed straight at the nearest one. After a blast, the firepower erupted. One was completely knocked down. But on the left suddenly another wild dog caught up. Park Kayu quickly helped it reunite with its kind. Then, he used both hands to hold the gun. After stabilizing, another shot was fired. One of his bullets shattered its head. Then, he muttered in frustration. One shot missed. The shaking car made it too hard to aim. In a hunting team, they usually split into 3 mission groups. One group supported with heavy weapons sniping from behind. The heavy weapon user hid in high places. Next, one would coordinate from mid-range, also called the target spotter. Park Kayu recalled old knowledge, and the one supported by rear firepower acted according to the spotter's tactics. He swung his axe at the monster's lower abdomen. The slash extended along his running path. In just an instant, the massive body collapsed. Park Kayu also retrieved his axe, and that one was called the direct monster fighter, the assassin. This was also Park Kayu's position. But now he could not wait for support. The most important thing at this moment was to think fast. Next, Park Kayu calculated, while fighting the mutant dogs and maintaining speed, I need to do both at once. That was the goal of the sniper building. While driving past, he had seen a strange figure. Curiosity mixed with fear made him look longer. What is that? The stray dog with snow-white fur named Gold. He looked at its appearance and judged. Is it the leader of those dogs? Next, Gold raised its head to the sky and roared. Its subordinates were immediately excited. They rushed closer to his car. His left hand turned the wheel, his right hand fired. The stray dog was taken down. Then, the car also slammed hard into another one. While escaping, he wondered, where did it suddenly come from? It seemed like it was scheming something, but with a pistol at this distance. Immediately after, a stray dog outside shoved the car. The steering wheel instantly swerved. Park Caillou couldn't help but curse, so troublesome. Meanwhile, Gold had moved to a higher place. His brain found a clue. Could it be? It was hurting me like hunting me. Gold leisurely looked down at the chaos below. Its eyes gleamed, mouth constantly letting out sounds. Park Caillou felt terrified. Was it controlling with its howls? Then, the stray dogs charged again like mad. Park Caillou coldly fired 2 bullets. Now he understood clearly, like it was commanding the hunt. It was guiding his movement with attacks at each intersection. Meanwhile, another stray dog died under his gun. Though the car was accelerating, Park Caillou gradually felt fear. It was driving him to death. In front of him the road was gone. Immediately Park Caillou turned the wheel, but the turn caused the dogs to rush themselves into a dead end. He declared firmly, I will not die so easily. When he ran onto another road, his nerves loosened. He had escaped death, but the car had suffered great damage. When facing Gold right behind, he glimpsed despair. I'm out of bullets. The car's condition also did not allow further delay before the dogs attacked again. I must leave here as fast as possible. The next second, he sensed a figure nearby. A bullet blasted away a stray dog. Thereupon, Park Caillou looked around. Rebecca called through the radio, Skeleton, I see you arrived. Let me cover you. Park Caillou also suddenly realized this area was sniper territory. I forgot that. He mocked himself slightly. Then, Park Caillou got out of the car. His murderous gaze swept over them. He thought silently, I found a heavy weapon user. Then, he picked up the radio. Rebecca, I need your support. Handle this in 3 minutes, okay? Then the axe began carving swirling slashes. Rebecca narrowed her eyes. She coldly fired downward. In an instant, 2 stray dogs were taken down. Gold seemed to notice the change. Its hatred was ignited. Park Caillou stood among the lifeless bodies of its kind. That was all it could remember. Next, he gave a cold glance. Gold immediately reacted. It knew now was the time to retreat. Right then, Sue and Rebecca had also come down, Skeleton. He and the little girl exchanged a hug. Everything gradually froze in this moment. At dawn that day, he gently urged, let's go, we must quickly leave this place. While hugging Sue, Rebecca seemed to notice something. On the far horizon, light was spreading. A gentle child's voice called, Skeleton, look. A rare natural scene contrasted with the apocalypse. Seeing that, Sue innocently exclaimed, so beautiful. Park Caillou dared not tell them. Those were fragments of the octopus monster oxidizing from afar. Then, he spoke, you two stay here for a moment. I'll take a photo. We came all this way and watched the sunrise. We should take a commemorative picture. Nearby, a female voice wondered, what are you doing? A selfie. The other scrolled through a screen with Park Caillou's photo. No, not me. A faint smile appeared. I am capturing something even more wonderful.